Other alphas of this generation took leadership roles at a national level, along with Andrew Young, brothers Charles Rangel, Adam Clayton Powell, William Gray, Ralph Metcalf, William Dawson, Ronald Dellums, Harold Ford, Julian Dixon, and Shaka Fatah have also served in the United States House of Representatives. Alpha's political presence in Washington, D.C. continues to grow today.
It's a great tradition because when you start talking about public policy and you look at Martin Luther King Jr., when you look at Thurgood Marshall, Ed Brooke, and then a continuation through the present Congress with 6 members of Alpha Phi Alpha serve in Congress today. We've had many members, recent members of Congress, Ron Dellums, Julian Dixon, Earl Hilliard have served recently, the 6 members now. We're making public policy, and the focus of the fraternity has been on education and political empowerment. Those have been 2 guiding lights, and I think it's important that we continue that.
Alpha represents leadership. It represents scholarship. It represents a commitment to service, to make your community a better place in which to live.
Alpha has had a strong presence for many, many years, I mean for decades, in Washington. And now we are fortunate in that we have a number of congressmen that are serving, but also we have a reach through brothers that are active on the staff side. You know, when I was at the White House, I was not the only Alpha at the White House. We have brothers who are taking staff roles in Congress, brothers who are taking staff roles in the Senate. And it's fortunate, we're fortunate that we can come together and work on important projects and be a part of important administrations.
Among the many Alphas who have served at all levels of American government are cabinet members Samuel Pierce, Louis Sullivan, Lee Brown, and William Coleman. Ambassadors Walter Carrington, O. Rudolph Agri, and James Joseph. And mayors Maynard Jackson, Richard Arrington, Marion Barry, Norm Rice, and Dennis Archer. In addition to service in government, Alpha's long tradition of military service remains strong as well. Officers such as Vice Admiral Samuel Gravely, Admiral Benjamin Hacker, and Brigadier General Fred Augustus Gordon are followed by more Alpha leaders today.
Whenever my father had a fraternity meeting, all of these men who walked into my house were the leaders of the community. The principal of the high school was an Alpha. The coach of the football team was an Alpha. Most of the professors and instructors at colleges and universities, Bethune-Cookman College, for example, is near Orlando, they were Alphas.
Well, I think Alpha has a major presence in the military, in all branch of services. At least one of the flag officers, I would venture to say, is either an Alpha man or familiar with Alpha Phi Alpha.
Alpha Phi Alpha's leadership as an organization has further expanded in the last decade. At the 1995 General Convention, Senator Edward Brooke spoke on the need for Alpha to broaden its view to encompass international concerns.
I wanted to do that because I think, as I've said often, that our intellectual power is so great that it ought to be shared, that we should be given our thoughts and our opinions on domestic and international issues, which heretofore we have not had that opportunity to do.
In 1996, the 29th General President, Milton C. Davis, acted on Senator Brooks' recommendation, expanding Alpha's involvement in politics and government policy with the creation of a new group within the fraternity, the World Policy Council. Appropriately, Davis asked Senator Brooke to serve as the first chairman of the World Policy Council.
And they set about seriously considering issues of domestic importance and international importance toward the end that they would write to these issues, would research them, would come forward with ideas and solutions and concepts to address serious issues. In essence, would become a think tank for Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
Howard University, site of Alpha's first General Convention many decades before, proudly hosted the World Policy Council members at their initial meeting after the group's formation.
Well, several years ago, the organization founded the World Policy Council here at the university. The first meeting, organizational meeting, was held here at Howard, and Senator Brooke and President Ponder and a number of others, Ambassador Horace Dawson, and many others were part of that founding. And I think it's a natural outgrowth, and it's a very mature and sophisticated response to global and world issues that really affect us all, and it's a recognition of that.
We work with men in that policy board. We talk, we think, it's like a think tank, and then we try to project what we think ought to happen, how we think the value that are consistent with the values of Alpha, and consistent with the values of an international leader like Martin Luther King Jr., who of course was an Alpha. To me, that is one of the cutting-edge ventures for Alpha, that we learn how to use the global platform to talk about local issues as well.
Our job, I think, is to do reflection, dialogue, research, and to reflect on major social and political issues, as well as religious matters.
After considerable discussion and reflection, we draw up and issue papers, position papers, on these matters, with the hope that our positions would affect and influence public policy. And we issue these position papers to the media of the country, to the opinion makers, but mainly, and also rather, not just mainly, but also to our fraternities, so that the chapters throughout the nation could accept these documents, read them, consider them, and make them a part of their onward discussion.
The President of the United States is getting this. When the President is making some big statement, a letter comes from this group, from this fraternity, saying how we think the President ought to react to this.
Since its founding, the World Policy Council has offered positions on the AIDS crisis, the problem of world hunger, the war on terror, among many other areas of foreign and domestic policy. The World Policy Council ensures that Alpha Phi Alpha's concerns and ideas are heard by those whose decisions shape the future. This group is a further step in Alpha Phi Alpha's long tradition of education and advocacy, and embodies the values of good citizenship and participation in public discourse. This active engagement in the political process is a natural extension of the fraternity's history of leadership. "100 years after its inception, the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity remains driven by the ideals of its founders at Cornell University in 1906. Individual attainment of education and scholastic achievement. This greater personal success makes possible service to others, striving for improvement of conditions for those less fortunate."
Well, I think Alpha will continue to play a major role because it still stands by those precepts that I told you about earlier. Scholarship, leadership, service to others. They'll never go out of style.
I think partly it is in the individual to realize that there is a greater society out there, and that those of us who are blessed have to give something back. But it is also something that is ingrained within the fraternity.
Cast your net out there as far as you can go. Try to make fishermen of men. Try not to give a man a fish, but give him a pole so he can learn how to fish, so he can make his own community better.
Man, if I don't do it, who else will? You know, all we have are each other. So if there's someone to move a community or move some kids in a more positive direction, we're it.
The practical application of this philosophy is the many social programs implemented by the fraternity. The roots of such an approach for addressing societal problems date back to the 1920s and 1930s with the implementation of the Go to High School, Go to College initiative and the Voteless People is a Hopeless People campaign. Today, both programs flourish and have further expanded to address additional academic, personal, social, and leadership needs of young African American males.
Our mentoring program involves a local high school where we take 7 young men and we work very intimately with them in relation to their academic success, their social success, improving their leadership abilities.
We have some brothers, including myself, who actually have a little brother. It's a one-on-one relationship concept. Then we have a program that we bring little brothers over to the fraternity building, and we work with them as a chapter.
Project Alpha was begun in the late 1970s in the Chicago area by Alpha Brothers of Iota Delta Lambda chapter. In 1982, the March of Dimes Birth Defects Foundation joined forces with Alpha, making the program national and taking important lessons to thousands of teens in hundreds of communities across the country.
Project Alpha was an attempt by our chapters to take young boys 10 to 14 years old and help them to understand what it means to be a man, medically, legally, morally, and spiritually. We don't have a formal puberty right in this country, but our fraternity has attempted to provide it for young African American males.
Alpha Phi Alpha and the Boy Scouts of America share common goals and objectives regarding the proper development of young men. In order to help Scouting reach its full potential, Alpha chapters and Brothers charter Scout units and serve as Scouting leaders on both the local and national level. Through the Boy Scouts, Alpha men become good neighbors while educating young men to become good citizens and leaders. At the 1990 General Convention, Alpha formally agreed to work with the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America to promote a positive experience for African American youth and their families. By providing role models and increasing minority participation in local Big Brother and Big Sister activities, Alpha Brothers add a valuable dimension to an already successful campaign. In the early 1980s, Alpha expanded its leadership training to correct the economic, social, and political injustices faced by African Americans. The Leadership Development Institutes, started by the southern region of Alpha Phi Alpha, addressed this need. The initiative achieved great success and was incorporated into the regular activities of other regions of the Alpha community. To facilitate uniform control, Alpha nationalized the Leadership Development Institutes, setting common standards and common goals. The program encourages young people to attend college and to develop oratorical ability and strong moral compass. Teaching parliamentary procedure, organizational, and communication skills builds confidence to succeed in the future. Alpha Phi Alpha's collaborative effort with the nation's Head Start program assists fathers in elevating their self-esteem by teaching self-sufficiency as a way to counter negative social influences. In 1998, the fraternity formally merged these programs under the Alpha Phi Alpha Education Foundation. Through the foundation, Alpha facilitates programs consistent with the ideals originally determined by its founders in 1906. College brothers play a major role in the workings of the fraternity. Those elected as assistant regional vice presidents serve as voting members of the board of directors. College brothers compete in a National Scholar Bowl and vie for distinction as College Brother of the Year. They demonstrate their impressive public speaking skills in the Belford v. Lawson oratorical competition.
And has sent our armed forces to Iraq in hopes of disarming Saddam Hussein. I am the product of feet that pound the pavement for equality, the voices that echo necessity by any means.
I've always thought of Alpha as a boot camp for leadership, Alpha is in the business of producing leaders nationally and internationally. When you look at our history, whether it's Thurgood Marshall, Adam Clayton Powell, the list is long. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the men who have contributed greatly to this country and internationally alphas. I think it was because of the training and the experience that they enjoyed as being part of this fraternity is what has enabled them to be significant contributors in their respective endeavors.
No question. I mean, this whole notion of leadership is something that can't be overlooked because I think the fraternity helped to train me to become a leader, and that's very important. And certainly, my job as mayor, my job as president of the National Conference of Black Mayors means that I'm put in a leadership position that I must perform in.
Hence, that has been our image, that we have been closely associated with the elite of black education.
If it's going to be great, the number has to be greater than 1. And so what we're doing at Alpha is learning how to marshal that intellectual and human capital and make sure that we always collectively impact on whatever we're trying to do, because one at a time it won't happen. It's got to be a collective impact.
It's just innate in us to want to lead. I don't care who you are. That's the way Alpha Alpha prepares you, and that's what the Jews saw, that we send you out to lead.
Men of Alpha are among the accomplished leaders of every area of professional life in America.
We are facing some serious challenges right now. And I think that Alpha is going to be right there in the thick of all these challenges that we face, providing leadership, providing direction, helping to prepare others, and saying that based upon our history and tradition, we have no choice except to keep moving forward, to keep finding answers, to keep producing the Ralph Bunches and the Martin Luther Kings, to keep making men who can match the mountains of today.
There's so many things out there that we haven't even begun to touch on. And the fraternity is really just, right now, it's just primed to really leap forward and be the leader that it's been the past 100 years.
Alpha demands that you build a legacy. That's what it demands. Okay, this has been established, but that's the past. It's already been laid. That foundation has been laid. Now we're talking about building the first floor, and the second floor, and the third floor. And it demands that you understand that your legacy is now.
We represent a legacy of leadership. And that leadership is so ingrained in whom we are. And it's just kind of expected, we're expected to be at the head of the line.
That's what I love about Alpha, that it's not only we have this rich history, but we continue to progress and move forward, take forward steps.
Not only are they just our college brothers and members of this fraternity, they are also our mentees. We try to mentor them. That's another dimension of this being in this fraternity.
Alpha became sort of like the school for me. The school for the better making of men is what we often say. And it was a school. It's something that taught me how to become a better man, taught me how to grow up and become an adult.
It's even more worth it when you look at a young brother who's a college brother who may have come from a rough kind of an individual to being a very fine, refined, and defined young man, now looking in leadership.
As the 20th century drew to a close, the Brothers of Alpha embarked on their most ambitious project to date, building a memorial dedicated to the life and works of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The idea for the memorial was born when Alpha man George Seeley impressed upon brothers Al Bailey, Oscar Little, and Eddie Madison the vital need to preserve and promote the legacy of Dr. King. The national organization adopted the idea and the political wheels of Alpha turned. When legislation was passed authorizing the fraternity to raise funds and build the memorial on the National Mall, General President-elect of Alpha Phi Alpha, Adrian Wallace, realized the enormity of the undertaking.
I knew at that point, coming into office, effective in 1997, that my priorities had to shift accordingly, because this was a project of magnitude and scale and scope that fraternity heretofore had never really taken on before. So clearly this was something we had to devote a considerable amount of energy and resource and leadership to craft this mammoth, truly a mammoth and historic undertaking.
The ultimate goal for those who visit the memorial is for them to emerge with an enriched experience, revitalized with the teachings and spirit of one of the 20th century's most influential men. While Dr. King will forever be treasured by his brothers in Alpha, he is but one Alpha man who excelled in his service to all humanity. In the last century, 32 Alphas have served as General President of the fraternity. This office commands respect and wields influence beyond the fraternity itself. The election of a new General President of Alpha is a highly competitive choice of a leader among leaders and is noted in the Congressional Record of the United States. Alpha's president is automatically considered one of the 100 most influential African Americans, meeting with other leaders in all walks of life, including the President of the United States. Past general presidents have a unique perspective on Alpha's century of achievement and on future challenges facing the fraternity.
The theme that has permeated Alpha across the decades, as Charles Wesley used to call it, the motif that is a part of us, is a sense of history and a sense of identity.
And when you know your history and know how your foreparents have struggled to get where we are, we really have come further as a people than anybody in history in such a short time.
Younger men look for leadership, and that's in fact what we provide, as you said. So when we provide leadership, young men look for that leadership, and for years our Phi Alpha has been providing that leadership.
When you go in and talk to young people, say in a classroom setting, you know, here we are, we got our suits on and we got ties on, and sometimes it's difficult to let them know that, hey, 60 years ago I was sitting in a situation pretty much where you are today, and this is what happened to me, this is what I did, and you can do that too, and you're going to need some help here, you're going to need help, and we're willing to help.
We have had in this fraternity a slogan, go to high school, go to college, and we have used that to help get more of our youngsters in school. And I think as we go forward, we should not think in terms of throwing out everything that we have already done. Some things that are old work very well. We need to mix that in with the new, but I think a go to high school, go to college campaign of some magnitude will certainly be good for us to continue as we move into the 21st century and beyond.
So part of our challenge will be to continue to seek out bright young men, encourage them to go to high school, to finish and come to college, because otherwise the African-American male is an endangered species.
Under the direction of the general presidents, the fraternity thrives. During the annual General Convention, Alpha leadership reports on accomplishments of the past year and outlines programs for the future. The younger generation fully participates as well. More recent traditions include the Miss Black and Gold pageant and the stepping competition. All brothers are made to feel welcome as parts of the greater whole that is the fraternity.
Alpha Phi Alpha is the safe haven. It is the place where men who are accomplished or who are accomplishing success can come together and reinforce that. There's so many negative images and stereotypes and perceptions out there. And again, there's so many people, some in your own family, telling you that, you know, why are you trying to go to law school? Why are you trying to be a doctor? Here is a place where you can sit down among peers, where it's understood the pressures and the travails of everyday living. But you look across the aisle or the next seat, and you know, here's a brother who understands what I've been through or what I'm going through. And you look back a few aisles, here's some young college brothers that we need to try to give a leg up and tell them what they can expect to go through. But it's a place where you can be around people who are dedicated to excellence, to success and achievement. And it perpetuates that environment.
The history of Alpha Phi Alpha men is extraordinary, for it parallels the history of African American progress in the 20th century and beyond, with Alpha men playing key roles throughout the struggle. The rise of the African American middle class is closely associated with the expansion of Alpha, and the fraternity's commitment to improving the condition of all mankind is unprecedented. As the Brothers of Alpha celebrate a century of extraordinary leadership and service, they are aware of and poised to meet the many challenges of the next century. For at the core of their existence, the drive to be first of all, servants of all, and to transcend all is paramount in every man of Alpha Phi Alpha. To learn more about this program, visit our website, mpt.org. Alpha Phi Alpha, A Century of Leadership, is made possible by major funding from All America Bank.